So there's some trigonometry, some product formulas for sine and cosine that your pre-calculus teacher should have encouraged you to memorize. I don't think this happens anymore in school. This is a video going over which ones I think are the easiest to memorize, and then you can derive anything else you need from those. Okay, you can find PDFs on the internet with lots and lots of formulas. You only need to memorize one set of these. And I think this is the easiest set to memorize. So memorize how to expand sine A plus B in terms of sine A, sine B, cosine A, and cosine B. And it's not hard. You take sine A, cosine B, and then you add the other one, sine B, cosine A. And then if there's a minus sign, also pretty easy, you just switch the sign here. Sine B, cosine A. Okay. The cosine one, pretty similar. This one starts with cosine A, cosine B. So now we have cosine and cosine. This one's a little weird. This plus actually makes it a minus over here. And then this is sine A, sine B. Cosine A minus B is cosine A, cosine B, and then this plus is now, or this minus is now plus sine A, sine B. Okay, so I would say memorize these. It feels like you don't have to memorize anything, but memorizing this set of formulas allows you to recognize them in a problem when you don't know they're going to show up. And I think this is very, very helpful in all of math. Okay, the thing that's going to come up in the subsequent lectures is actually the opposite. You're going to have like sine C plus sine D, and we're going to want to write it as a product. We're going to want to write it as something sine times cosine. The reason for this is it's hard to graph something like sine C plus sine D. It's easier to graph things multiplied together because we can kind of use the same principles that we saw in the damped formulas, where we have this a big shape of the curve outside, and then the shape of your sine or cosine wave is going to change based on the curve outside. So we'll see that in the subsequent lectures. For now, let's just try to figure out what this formula should be. The easy way to do this is to let C be A plus B and D be A minus B. And then what happens is we'll be able to use these two formulas. Notice if we add these together, since we have a plus and a minus here, these terms will cancel out. So we'll get a product of two sine or cosine things like we want. Okay, so what happens here though? If C is A plus B and D is A minus B, then if we add these two equations together, we get C plus D equals A, because the B's cancel, equals 2A, sorry. We have 1A here, B minus B is 0. So then A is going to be C plus D over 2. And then same thing if we subtract these two equations, this equation minus this equation, we get C minus D equals, the A's will now cancel, B minus negative B, sorry, this is out of the screen, B minus negative B is 2B. So then B is C minus D over 2. Okay, so what happens, well, we're just going to add these two. This is actually sine A plus B plus sine A minus B. These will cancel, and we'll get 2 times this term, 2 times sine A cos B, which is 2 sine, and then A is C plus D over 2. And cosine B is C minus D over 2. And you can do a very similar approach if you wanted to take sine C minus sine D. Well, here you can actually do the exact same thing, this exact same substitution, and then the minus things will just cancel this one, and so it'll be the other one. So that'll be very similar. And you can do cosine ones too, cosine C plus cosine D. Same thing, actually. All the substitutions will be C equals A plus B, D equals A minus B. And then one of these will cancel depending on the sign. We can do a minus here as well, and then the other one will cancel. So you can get all your formulas from these easy formulas to memorize. I think this formula is much harder to memorize. That's just my opinion.